This is New Day Northwest. Now, here's Margaret Larson.
First up today, the author of the best-selling science fiction book, The Martian, which spent 20 weeks at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. He's out with a brand new novel. Artemis introduces us to a young 20-something who wants to get out of her small town. The only problem is she lives in the first and only town on the moon. Joining me now, please welcome author Andy Weir. It's so nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
So you have the most fascinating writer's story. You spent how many years in computer science?
25.
25 years. So then you decide, well, I'll write a book.
Sure.
Right, why not?
There's
And it's The Martian. He writes The Martian for his first book.
A few intermediate steps there.
So obviously you're a hard science fan.
Yeah,
and
big time.
I think that's, that's the beauty of these books. You're like a one-man advertisement for STEM education, which is so cool.
Oh, thanks.
How did you come up with the notion for The Martian?
Well, for The Martian, I am the sort of dork who sits around thinking about, hey!
See, we can't even do that.
Yeah, no, that's how
dorky
bad of a dork we are.
Yeah.
I am the sort of guy who sits around and thinks up, like, how could we do, put people on Mars? How could we do a mission to Mars?
What would happen if?
Yeah, right. And so I was just working out the mission profile for a mission to Mars, not even thinking of writing a book. And I was like, okay, well, here's how we get them there. Here's how we do all this. Of course, we don't want them all to die if something goes wrong. So what if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? What if these two things go wrong? And I'm like, this sounds like maybe an interesting idea for a story. So I rolled with it.
Turned out to be, and then it's, a film directed by Ridley Scott, who's my favorite director.
Well, it's your typical first book experience.
Exactly. It's, like all of us who write a little something and it becomes a blockbuster. And you love the movie, right?
Oh, yeah. No, they did a fantastic job. Drew Goddard did just an amazing job of adapting so much content into a digestible 2.5-hour movie. It was like, because if you did everything that was in the book, it'd be a 6-hour film. You have to cut things out.
Right. So, it was beautiful visually, and it's science, but it also has incredible heart. And I think Artemis is one of those books as well. You've done a bang-up job for a follow-up. So tell us what Artemis is.
Well, like you said in the intro there, it takes place in humanity's first city that isn't on Earth, and it's on the moon. It's only got about 2,000 people. Their main industry is tourism. And the main character is a woman who's about, a woman who's like 26 years old, and she's a small-time criminal. She's a smuggler.
As one is, yes.
As you do. Well, she's poor and small-time criminal, and she gets an offer to do this, one big job. And of course, as is standard fare for stories like this, all sorts of stuff goes wrong. She gets in way over her head.
Crime caper on the moon. Jazz Bashara, rather, is the name of the main character. And thank you for having a good, strong female character, which you did also in The Martian. But
Commander Lewis.
Yes, this was pretty
Well, they
cool
were
as
all
well.
Commander Lewis, Mindy Park.
Everybody was. Yeah, absolutely. So it is a thriller. It also has hard science. So do you start with the science of the thing again with this book?
Yeah, I had actually designed the whole city of Artemis, its economics, its history, like how they built it.
You are a nerd. You're
I
just
am
a big
absolutely
nerd.
a nerd. I love to do this. That's the fun part.
That's the best.
Right? World building is the fun part. The pesky characters and plot are something that comes as an afterthought. No, people are going to just quote that over and over again now. But I had designed the whole city before I came up with any story ideas, and then I went through multiple different story ideas before I got to one I liked. Basically, I feel like stories should work around the setting, not the other way around. Like, if I was writing a book that took place in Chicago, I wouldn't be able to then say, oh, there's no waterfront. It's like, well, yes, there is. You have to deal with that. You can't just ignore it. So I wanted the city to make sense first, and then design around
go
that.
from there. So people live in these domes, and then I thought it was fascinating. They have to be airtight, right? So what's the construction of the dome on the moon?
Well, so they're actually spheres. They're half underground and half above ground. So if you look at them from ground level, they look like domes. It's 6 centimeters of aluminum, and then 1 meter of crushed lunar rock, and then another 6 centimeters of aluminum.
All things we can find on the moon.
Yeah, you can, there's an enormous amount of aluminum ore just out on the surface of the moon. You can smelt that locally. You don't need to bring it in from Earth. And then that provides first off, a double hold system, so that if you get a puncture in one of the holes, everybody doesn't die. You just calmly get everybody out of that sphere and seal it off and fix it. And second off, between those two chunks of aluminum and the rock, it gives you enough radiation protection. Because there's a lot of radiation, the moon is way outside Earth's magnetic field and has no atmosphere to protect people from galactic radiation.
So do you see what I mean? Like, you learn all this cool stuff while this neat story is going on. So who's doing the audiobook for this?
The audiobook is out, available now.
At fine retailers everywhere.
At fine retailers everywhere. It's Rosario Dawson
Perfect.
of many different things fame,
Right.
but most people probably know her as being in the various Netflix Marvel things like Daredevil and blanking. What's the one?
the
Defenders.
James Cameron movie
The Defenders.
as well.
Yes, yes. And she's been all around. She did a magnificent job. She's a consummate professional. She
Did
would
you
read,
choose her? How does this get chosen once you've written the book?
That was up to Audible. They would consult me. They'd say, "Hey, what would you think about this?" But it's not like I had any authority over this. I was just like, "Yay!"
Yeah.
And they said like, "Hey, we're gonna ask Rosario Dawson to narrate." I'm like, there's no way she's going to go for that. Well, it makes like, I don't know, $10 million a season. I'm not sure what she makes, but she makes a lot. And like, I don't know what Audible's willing to pay to narrate an audiobook, but it takes a long time. So there's no way she's going to, and they're like, yeah, she said yes. And we're like,
that's so cool, right? Now, I'm wondering, you've already talked, you've spoken before the House Subcommittee on Science. We're hearing all this news today about the missiles from Korea. I've learned more than I thought I would ever know about miniaturizing a warhead and re-entry and blah, blah, blah. When you watch the news, do you sort of look at it in a different way because you are seeing the hard science of all of these things and also observing whether hard science is being respected?
I mean, in the case of international politics like that, there's the only hard science in that question is, do they actually have that technology?
Right.
My guess is no. They say a lot of stuff, the DPRK does, and they've been able to get missiles that fly over Japan and stuff like that. But it's a long way to get from their furthest missile test to the mainland U.S. is still a large difference. So I'll believe it when I see them do a missile launch test that goes out into the middle of the ocean, but far enough that it could have reached the
Right.
U.S.
How long does that take for a country like that to come up with?
Well, if they keep working on it, they'll get there eventually.
Eventually is way too soon for me.
Yeah, they don't have a strong infrastructure, but they do still have a national infrastructure, and missile, booster and missile technology is considerably easier than nuclear technology. So.
Interesting. All right, well, keep us informed on that so we know when to freak out. I'm not going to freak out yet.
Yeah, I wouldn't freak out yet. If they were really serious, what they would do is do a missile test where they'd launch it way out into the middle of nowhere in the Pacific or something like that, and so that all the major countries of the world's early warning systems would see it and say like, okay, well, it went that far. Yep, now we know they can deliver to us.
That's when we freak out. That's just so you know.
When we
we'll
freak out.
Try to be calm until then. So, what do you want people to take away from Artemis?
I never have a point to my stories. I really don't.
You just want us to enjoy.
That's exactly it. It's purely for entertainment. I want people to enjoy the book, and when you're done, put it down and go, huh, that was cool, and hopefully recommend it to some friends.
Well, I don't think there's going to be any problem with that. Thanks. I read it. It's cool. I recommend it to you, my friends. Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you. Keep writing. Don't stop. Andy is holding 2 discussions. One is tonight at Bellingham High School at 7 p.m. The second is tomorrow at Third Place Books in Bothell, also at 7. We'll be sure to put all the details on New Day's website. And a bonus for everybody in today's audience, you're all going home with a copy of Artemis, which you're going to love. Up next, Attorney General Bob Ferguson joins AARP with an alert about scams targeting military veterans. More on that after this.